I'm Chris Colledge. I head up our technical account management team here at Bytes. Before heading up our technical account management team here at Bytes, I led a team of multi-cloud solutions architects, which had sort of domain specialisms in on-prem, AWS, Azure, all of the main cloud platforms, which is a very fancy way of saying I led a team of really clever people, but if you asked them to stand on stage in front of other people, they went off shivering in a corner. So I've been in IT for just under 10 years now. I started my career at a company that at the time was one of the top 3 public cloud providers in the market. They had their public cloud offering, they had a private cloud offering, they had something which could deploy public cloud in your own data center anywhere in the world, which would look a lot like some of the hyper-converged infrastructures and sort of Azure locals of today. It was an early pioneer. But they also had a managed VMware offering. And about 6 years ago, they decided to defocus on that managed VMware offering and get as many customers as possible into the public cloud. And so I was working for that company when they decided to do that. And so because of that, I've been part of quite a few VMware to public cloud migrations. Don't worry, I'm not here for a job interview or anything like that, but that's just sort of what I've been part of, about 64, 65 VMware to public cloud migrations I've been a part of in some form, way, shape, or form. So either a consulting capacity, an advisory capacity, an on-the-tools capacity. And so what I'm really here to do is spend the next 2.5 hours talking to you about moving. No, I'm not, don't worry. I'm going to spend a little bit of time because I appreciate sort of the session after the coffee, and there's a much more interesting session on data and AI where my colleagues Tony and Tom over there are going to teach you how to purchase the perfect bottle of wine using data science. So I'll try and keep it fairly quick. Well, actually, hang on, by show of hands, how many of you use VMware? Quite a few. Anyone work for VMware? Really? Okay, cool. Can you get the backup deck? No, I'm kidding. It's not too bad. But you know, anyone Hoctan? No. All right, fine, cool. We're safe. So yeah, I'm going to spend the next 20, 25 minutes talking about some of the things that are going on in the industry, things that are changing in the market that are relevant, what VMware is really doing, and why sort of it is the time to capitalize on making a meaningful change and what the risks of not doing anything are. So hopefully I can leave you with some good reasons to actually start projects about moving away from VMware and into public cloud environments. And if I can't, then lunch is on me or on Bytes. Whose share price is this? Any guesses? No, we'll come back to it in a bit. Let's take a minute to talk about the role of IT in 2024, because it is changing and it continues to change. This is a photo that I took from Microsoft Ignite. Microsoft Ignite had over 500 sessions, in-person, labs, on-demand, all of those kind of sessions. You wouldn't be surprised to feel like every single one of them contained the words Copilot, AI, generative AI, BI, all of these kind of buzzwords that are going around in the market at the moment. This session was on building resilient architecture. This wasn't an AI session. This wasn't a session designed around, looking at Copilot Studio or anything like that. This was techies in a room, and it's seating on the wall room only, and people were standing at the back, and it was one of the busiest sessions that I went to. It was also second busiest session to one about Azure Arc and extending Azure to your data center, and that made me sort of really open my eyes to think, look, there is still a place for traditional IT and IT architecture and traditional ways of IT teams forming part of the business. But everything else was about AI, and everything else was about the user. And I want to put that into focus because 5 years ago, you would have gone to one of these conferences, and everything was about enabling the IT team to enable the user. It was all about what tools can we give the IT team to go and build tools for the end users. That's no longer a thing, right? Nothing from the market is telling us that. The whole thing the market is telling us is, how does the cloud providers empower the user directly? You look at Copilot, Copilot Studio, Power Apps, Power BI, all of these tools that are available to you, they're all about empowering the end user. And that end user might be a developer, and that end user might be a data analyst, and that end user might be someone in your legal team. But it's all about how does Microsoft and how do any sort of hyperscaler get that technology direct to the user. Look at Microsoft's slogan. It's about empowering every user in every organization to do more. So we're past the point where businesses deem servers and VMware and managing hypervisors as the kind of stuff that really makes a difference. And I'm not saying it doesn't, by the way, before people chase me out with pitchforks, but yeah, when you're talking to customers and when you're talking to people nowadays, they're talking about how do they enable the users, and you sort of go, where does my VMware strategy fit into that? Does the VMware strategy really, is it really just an expensive way of keeping the lights on, or is it really empowering users across your business? And the thing is, sort of, people are happy to migrate to cloud and suck up the costs of cloud bills and higher cloud bills than predicted because they know that driving innovation through cloud and letting people and users have on-demand access to tools is a problem worth fixing, right? You look at the FinOps industry. The FinOps industry has grown massively in the last few years, right? And it continues to grow massively, predictably, because businesses have flipped it on its head and they've said, I would much rather create that problem than have the problem of people not having access to the tools that they need to do their job. This is an acceptable problem. Overspending on cloud is an acceptable and fixable problem. What's not acceptable and what's not fixable is people not being able to do their jobs quickly and IT slowing them down. And for a long time, people have said, okay, well, look, if everything comes through the IT team, then that does inherently slow things down. But if we give people access to the tools that they need, it stops slowing things down. VMware doesn't form part of that strategy. And I was speaking to the global head of workspace for a top 10 accountancy firm. He was sat next to me on the plane out to Chicago, and I thought I'd spend that 9 hours speaking to him about his IT strategy, because that's the kind of fun guy that I am. He didn't have a good flight. I had a great flight. The wine helped. But yeah, I was talking to him about kind of how much decision-making power he has within his organization, right? I was saying, oh, so you get to choose everything that everyone uses, right? You're global head of workspace. And he was like, hardly choose anything. I see my job to build the guide rails for purchasing, technology, security, build the blueprints for every one of the regional CIOs and every one of the people within regions to be able to make their own technology choices. They know what they need. They know what they need to go and buy. I don't need that. I just need to know how to purchase it properly, how to make it secure, how to implement it properly, how to make that change properly, right? So it's not really for them about building data centers and serving that out through shared services. It's not really about managing virtual machines. He sees his job as, sort of empowerment of technology and choosing those guide rails, right? Again, think about whether VMware fits into that strategy. Now, a lot of people that I've spoken to, they say we just can't do it, right? Show of hands, how many people think that they can never move away from VMware? Yeah, exactly. A lot of people, though, when you get them on a call, they say, oh, but this is too complex and that is too complex. We'll never do it because of this server that lives there, and it's an all tangled mess. This building is the Bell building in Chicago. When I was out in Chicago, I had the pleasure of meeting a guy called Chris Reed. Chris Reed is the brother to our public sector sales director, Richard Reed, but he also, in 2006, wrote a book on DevOps pipelines, which A, makes him one of the first people to ever talk about DevOps pipelines, but B, makes him vastly more technical than our public sector sales director, Rich Reed, who's not here today. I was hoping he was. He pointed to this building when we were out to lunch, and he said, this building is being completely refurbished. It's got sort of wall-to-wall scaffolding, hoarding down the sides, construction work going on all over it, and he pointed to one floor which had none of that going on. And he said, you see that floor there? In that floor is wall-to-wall mainframes, right? This building has been standing for years, and in that one floor is wall-to-wall mainframes, and as they're refurbing this whole building, Bell said, do not go anywhere near that floor. Don't touch the power for that floor. Don't touch the cooling for that floor. You cannot go anywhere near that floor because there are loads and loads of customers that are still running on those mainframes that have just not been able to ever move away from that mainframe technology. Can you imagine how much they're paying for that? They must be paying a fortune for that. All because they never said, let's do something else. They've always said, look, too complex, whole business runs on it, can't ever do anything, let's just leave that, right? They just said they can't switch it off, can't be hosted in Azure. What's the solution? Never move to Azure. And they've always just stayed in the data center. Again, you've got a whole multi-million-pound building being refurbed, full of mainframes that can't be switched off. Well, can anyone tell me where this is? Anyone recognize this? It's a lovely city, isn't it? No, this is Slough. Gorgeous. Yeah, there are over 160 data centers in Slough, 60 different providers. Some of them might be Microsoft data centers, but obviously they don't publish. There's Microsoft data centers in that picture. Right next to one of them is an Equinix data center. And we had a customer in one of my last roles where they needed to move all of their environment into the cloud, right? And they said, we'll never be able to do it. We've got a few AS400s in there. Never, ever be able to migrate our infrastructure into the cloud. So we said, look, well, why don't we migrate everything else that's not your AS400s into the cloud? And we tried doing a few tests, and everything kept speaking back to the AS400s. And they said, look, it's just not going to happen. We're not going to do it. And so we were like, well, why don't we try and migrate the AS400s? And they were like, what do you mean? And we were like, well, try and put them in the cloud. And we were just getting nowhere with it. The latency going back and forth between on-prem made the cloud project unviable as well. And so we ended up turning around and saying, why don't we actually just pick up these AS400s and put them in the back of a van and take them to an Equinix data center right next door to the Azure data center? Because, again, if you're somewhere here, the connectivity to another data center somewhere in this picture is very, very low latency with a direct connection. So that's what we did. We picked it up, we put it in the data center. Latency actually went down, going between, there's sort of two buildings on the bottom right there. The latency between the Microsoft point of presence and the Equinix data center was lower than the latency when everything was running in their own data center. Probably someone's set a switch up wrong somewhere or something, but it still went down. So yeah, the speed of the connection actually went up. They're currently living in Slough. We didn't let that be a blocker, but it would have been very easy for them to show all of those blockers. It would have been really easy for them to can the project. It would have been really easy for them to say, look, it's just too difficult. Our IT is just so complex. You don't really understand our IT, without getting on that first step, right? Getting on the first step is the hardest thing to do. So I guess the point that I'm trying to make is, you know, if they hadn't have done that, they probably would have still been on AS400s forever. And they probably would have been in the same scenario as all of those mainframes in the Bell building in Chicago. Don't let people tell you that it's too complex. And if you're one of those people that's sort of sat there saying, oh, look, it is too complex, ask yourself honestly, have you even tried to do something differently? Of the successful VMware migrations that I've been a part of, they've always started with this big one first technical blocker. But as soon as you get over that first technical blocker, it becomes incredibly easy to just keep running, right? Bytes, coincidentally, have developed a co-delivery methodology to doing these kind of migrations, right? Because I fully understand where a lot of customers come from. They sit there and they go, yeah, but to get up that first step is going to cost me hundreds of thousands of pounds of consultancy and hiring people and people that have done it before. And you know, that's just not appetizing to us as a business, especially not right now, right? We developed a methodology that works with our customers to actually sort of give them the support where they need to get them onto that first step and then dial it back once they're already on that first step and allow them to keep running with it. So let's talk about another elephant in the room. A lot of people, they'll say they don't have the skills. You know, businesses are in a tough position where keeping the lights on and trying to drive innovation and trying to upskill at the same time. You know, looking around the room, probably not many people in the room have a few days a week to be able to train up on anything or skill up on anything. And I get that. But I also think that there's a lot of blockers from the business by where the business or the people making the decisions use skills as a protector for not actually instigating any change, right? I was speaking with one CIO the other week, and he said that they don't want to do their cloud project because they don't want all their employees to get skilled up in the cloud and then they'll leave for higher salaries, right? It's a concern. And I'd say that if you're that type of CIO, what are you doing at an event about innovation? Secondly, it's not true. It's just not true. You know, I'm looking around and I'm looking around at some of the customers in the room that we've helped move to VMware, and actually, I'm looking at people that have been part of that migration, and then they're actually in higher jobs than they were to begin with, right? People retain the knowledge that from the traditional IT infrastructure that they've run, and they're the best people to operate the cloud environments that you're going to go and build, because they know why decisions were made, they understand the infrastructure, and actually what you'll find is people with traditional infrastructure skills actually make really good cloud engineers. I used to have a team of 6. We all had to pass a certification, quite a hard certification. It was an expert level certification. We had a timeline to do it. I had cloud guys, I had AWS guys, I had Azure guys, and I had one guy who only ever did data center stuff, right? And you tried to convince him to do anything with the cloud. Oh, no, I don't like that, right? But I was like, look, we have to pass this certification. So we managed to put together study groups, and we'd go through like test exams and stuff like that together. And every time we got stuck on a question, can you believe the guy that knew the answer straight away? It was him. Every single time he knew the answer. No idea how. I guess it's just the sort of skill set that he has and that he's brought with him from 25, 30 years in the data center industry. And he was actually one of the first people to pass that exam as well. And believe it or not, he got full marks. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that the skills that you've got within your team, if you think that they're not capable of doing a cloud migration, it's simply not true. They absolutely are. It leads us to the second area where skills are often cited as a problem, which is that people don't want an over-reliance on third parties. People don't want to get skills in. I guess businesses are faced with a really tough choice, right? If you know that maybe there are some skills gaps within your team, you're faced with the choice: do you sort of hire externally, really expensive, takes a fair bit of time, you might get a bad hire, you might hire these people and then projects get delayed, and then you've just got people sat on the bench for a while whilst the projects are waiting to kick off. And then maybe the focus is change, and it's hard to reallocate their skills elsewhere in the business, and it's hard to let people go. Next is you go to third parties. We've spoken about that. If you're paying someone on a day rate to do a job, do they ever finish doing the job, or do they end up just integrating into your business? And that's why when you go to some businesses, it's sort of, you look around the room and there's people there from all of the big outsourcers, and no one actually works for the company in the room. So that happens as well. And then if you do try and upskill internally, again, the time that it takes to do that is really tricky, but also you don't want to gain battle scars as you go. It's all well and good doing something alongside someone if you're going to migrate a production database and then push it into production. But if you're doing that for the first time in your whole career, it's a bit risky. Probably don't want to be doing that. So Bytes developed this co-delivery methodology to sort of make a blend of all 3 of those areas, right? When we engage on a project, we allow the customers to set the needle about how involved they want us to be. Early stage in the project, the customer normally says, we want you really involved. We want you at the controls doing stuff. And we want us there just sort of looking at what you're doing, asking you why you're making decisions, being involved in the decision-making process, but really just sort of being adjacent to the experts that are doing it. As projects move forward, the customer dials back that needle to sort of doing it together, still making decisions together, still doing the meetings together, still logging into the portals together and doing the migration together. But at the tail end of that migration, we say to customers, look, we've done the first 2 migration waves. You've been with us on that so far. You figured it out. Why don't you do the rest of the migration waves, and we'll just be there if you need a hand, right? And we'll be the safety net if something goes wrong. And we'll be there on the other end of the phone. And what that does is it saves a phenomenal amount of money, right? That saves so much money having to outsource a whole project to a consultant. But then the upskilling piece is resolved, because when the consultant hands it back, they're not just handing back a project that you've not been a part of at all, right? They're handing back a project that every single decision you've been involved in, right? Every time they've had to do a workaround around something, you know why they've had to do that workaround. And it just helps onboard these things quicker. But I think, in reality, I can give you all of these reasons to do it, but a lot of it comes down to a resistance to change, right? All of the technical skills and challenges that can be overcome, and there's a business case that can be made to overcome all of these business challenges. But according to 2 studies, let's say you're in the middle of a VMware migration, they studied a load of people who were resistant to change in an organization. 42% of them were middle managers, right? Or mid-level managers. But that compares to 47% of business decision makers at the mid-management level who have to give final approval of projects. So people who aren't, C-level, they're the ones that are looking after the VMware environments, very resistant to change normally, but they're also the ones that have to sign off whether you're going to do a VMware project or not. And I think that is why a lot of VMware projects don't happen. So, gauge the wider team, see if it's a bias and a resistance to change, and see if it's something that you can explore. And lastly, if those two reasons haven't been enough to convince you, let's have a look at the money side of things. So the old financial reasons, I've been building cloud business cases for quite a while. And the funny thing is you can make it stack up either way, right? When you look at doing the cloud cost calculators and then the TCO analysis, I'm sure we've all done things like that before, where you look at how much your utilization is, you look at how much your data center's really costing you, how much those staff are costing you, what the cost of not changing is, all of that kind of stuff. It used to be easy to make a business case either way. If you wanted to make a business case for VMware, you go into companies who prefer CapEx and they prefer to own assets and things like that, and you make the business case in that way. If you go into companies who are looking to instigate change, you go in with the cost of not being able to change and stuff like that. But the TCOs, it was very easy for VMware to compete against cloud by showing you never own anything, you never have any assets, anything like that. Right? It's easy for VMware to do that. It's getting a little bit harder for VMware to do that, with some of the changes that they've made to their licenses, which we'll go into in a second. So in essence, they've removed quite a lot of the individual VMware products, and they're trying to bundle it into sort of subscription and support-based licenses, removing of the sort of non-enterprise SKUs, and just got the enterprise SKUs, removal of charity discounts, and not giving sort of people the discounts that they might have had if they were like a non-for-profit or anything like that. And we'll go into some of the categorizations in a second. But going back to this share price, this was Broadcom's share price. Why do I mention this? Right? Because as a technical account manager, and with the team of technical account managers, we have spent more time than ever in the last year making sure that every single one of our customers' pennies counts, right? It is really a tough market. And I'm not an economist, not a financial advisor. That's legal, that I have to say that, by the way. But none of that really matters, right? Because a lot of our time is spent saving money on cloud, making sure that every pound that our customers spend is the right pound to spend and goes as far as possible. The economic conditions are really, really hard. This guy's having a great time, right? So, the acquisition of VMware by Broadcom has gone really well for them. And Mr. Tan takes most of his salary in stock price, which tells me one thing. It tells me that he's running a shareholder-focused business and less of a customer-centric business, in my opinion, right? Some of our customers are really, really, really struggling with their VMware renewals, and I can tell you why in a little bit more detail. In essence, again, all of the individual SKUs have largely gone away. If you look at things like vSphere Foundation, it's now purchased as a bundle. In that bundle, you need other technologies such as the 100 gig of vSAN Enterprise, Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, ARIA Suite. Does everyone need them? Maybe, maybe not, but because you've got to buy it as a bundle, your price goes up. Alongside that, VMware are categorizing you into, in essence, 3 categories, no matter what kind of organization you are: commercial, corporate, and strategic, right? The commercial customers have very few restrictions, but the corporate and the strategic customers, with corporate, they're leading with vSphere Foundation to be able to sell you that bundle there. And if you're categorized as strategic, you get sold the top VCF bundle, which is it's a lot of money. So in essence, that's how they're being categorized. You don't really have much say or a choice in it. We can't really figure out too much logic behind it. They have published some guidelines, but we've seen customers categorized sort of all over the place that we can't really do anything about. And if you're in that strategic bracket, it can get quite expensive. One example that we've had in the last few weeks, leading public sector body, everyone in here would have heard of them. Their support renewal went from £100,000 to £600,000 due to being categorized as a strategic account, only being able to buy VCF. They only needed maybe 15, 20% of VCF, and they got categorized as a strategic account, and now they have to buy all of it at sort of 600K. Another one is the going from standard vSphere Enterprise to the VVF bundle. So as a customer that would have normally been a commercial customer, gets categorized as a corporate customer, and now they have to go from buying standard vSphere Enterprise up into the VVF bundle. That's put their costs up 150% from 407K to 600K. I think another part of the problem is they're not giving any renewal prices anytime soon, right? So if you've got a VMware renewal in the next year, anyone got a VMware renewal in the next year? A few people, yeah. Got a renewal price yet? Yeah. More than you expected? 200%, all right. I'll give you that tenner later. That's not a joke. It's expected, right? And if you're far out of your VMware renewal contract, they're not giving you a renewal price. And VMware migrations take time. You know, I'm not up here to say that they're really easy things to do. I'm hoping that that AS400 example I gave you sort of said that, you know, these things are challenging. There are things to overcome. There are difficult things that you're going to have to do in the scope of a VMware migration. But the problem is, if you don't know what you're comparing against ahead of time, then how are you supposed to build a plan? How are you supposed to build a cost-benefit analysis or anything like that? And the customers that have gone to VMware and said, look, we need to do something, please give us our price, they've sort of got a bit spooked a little bit and their price has gone right up, right? So the things to consider really are kind of, what's your timeline? When's your VMware renewal? When's it coming up? Do you have enough time to do anything about it, right? Because a cloud migration is possible. There's loads of other options as well that you can look at, but a cloud migration should be front and center of kind of what your plan should be. Microsoft have some really good things that make it very easy to move away from VMware as a stopgap. Let's take rehost, for example. Rehost, lifting and shifting, sticking it somewhere else. You could do that to cloud native. I'd say a good 75, 80% of the migrations to from VMware that I've been involved with are to cloud native technologies. There's a lot of people in the industry that say, oh, it's really complex, we don't have that, we can't change that much. We've done it. The bad stories that you hear about are the edge cases where people said, oh, we migrated and then it actually put our TCO up 7 times, or oh, we migrated and then we had to take it all back to on-prem because X, Y, Z reasons. They're edge cases. They're the edge cases that you hear about for different use cases. 95% of the ones we work with are still on VMware, right? Speak to a customer just before this, and I said, oh, I'm about to talk to VMware. They said, oh, we remember those days. And it was really uplifting to sort of hear that things have been successful for them, right? It is possible to do. It just takes time. Because of that, you've built a stopgap. Let's say you rehost it. The financials aren't where you need them to be. They're a bit more expensive because it's the most expensive way of moving to cloud, but you have built yourself a stopgap to protect you from any VMware price increases or anything like that. It then gives you the option to re-platform, right? If you just lift and shift to cloud and leave it there, it's probably one of the worst outcomes you can have, right? Because it's not fully realizing the benefits of the cloud at all. So if you're able to rehost, you should build a plan to re-platform and then obviously build a plan to refactor and use the most of their cloud-native technologies. We can help with some of that. We can help look at kind of what your expected VMware costs are going to be. We can look at scoping out what your different options are. We can give you some really good, accurate pricing analyses based on what your install base is and how many cores you're using and things like that. And then we can go back to you with some cost modeling. But we could do loads of different workshops with you as well that just give you an honest opinion of kind of, we're not going to say it's easy. We're not going to promise that you're going to be able to install an agent on all your VMs and then click a button and then poof, you're in Azure. We're going to talk to you about all of the technical blockers that you're going to face. But we've got a pretty good code delivery methodology that will help you do it. And I'm hoping that if you take anything from this today, it's that it is possible. And I want everyone to really be thinking, what are VMware going to have to do for you to say, right, maybe it's worth exploring something else. Maybe it's worth putting something else on the table apart from renewing every single year. Because, otherwise you don't want to end up in the Bell building 20 years later with your servers there that can't be turned off.